And Byron, you didn't know that you were setting up a transition for me, and I appreciate that as well. See, my wife is a nurse in a children's hospital in downtown Detroit. She works in the emergency room, and she works in the intensive care units. And I come home from work, and I say something about having a stressful day, and she looks at me, and she says, "Oh, did someone almost die in your cubicle today?" And that kind of helps me put things back into perspective as to where life really is. So appreciate that. Advisory, we've already heard the term a little bit today. And I think that we get into these debates about what advisory means, what it is, and what it doesn't mean. And I believe that we often get too precise, right? And I know, is that even a thing with accountants to be too precise? Is that a fair assessment? But I think that we get in our own way when we try to narrowly define advisory services. And I think it causes problems for us. I think what happens is as we do that, we get way too focused in the right here, right now, and not focused enough on where are we taking our customer. Where are they going? What's the role that we're really playing with them? Another question that comes up is advisory a trendy way of saying consulting? Because if we know one thing about accountants, we know we're trendy. And a couple laughs. All right. I'll work on it. In short, no, it's not. It is not. You think about consulting that your clients have had done. And if it's like a lot of firms that I've worked with over the years, a consultant came into your client, they did some work that you probably could have done yourself, but they didn't ask you about. But we're going to just ignore that for right now, okay? Consultant walked in and said, yes, let me solution for you. Boom, boom, boom. Here's a PowerPoint deck. At least 30 extra slides in the appendix because we're paid per paper like lawyers. And we're out the door and you're left alone on implementation for yourselves. And so when I think about what's the difference between consulting and advisory work, I think of that a lot with consulting, is really building a solution and leaving it with someone. But if we look at what we're doing with advisory, that's really much more long-term. It's more trajectory in nature of where we're going and how we're going to put this into place. So this isn't about a service or a set of services. I think if we could start to shift just a little bit and to say, what if this is about the way we relate to our clients? What if the advisory services are not a list of things on our website, recently updated for the first time in 15 years, whatever it may be for you firms. Ooh, let's add advisory. Okay, great. Everything's in square boxes, and now we have advisory. What does that say? Another talk, another time. But really, this is about the foundation of how we are relating to our customers all together. The word context is not up here, but it certainly could be. And this is how we're operating with our clients. One of the things I like to say is that we operate best when we understand the context in which we are operating. And that's how, if we look at our relationships with our clients, say, how do we help them excel? How do we excel with them? We have to have the right set of context for them and how we engage in those areas. So how do you execute a relationship that is advisory in nature? Okay? Now, we're in Maryland, so the Baltimore Ravens have really good execution. I live in Michigan. Detroit Lions are executing something very different. We're not sure what it is yet. They're going to let us in on the secret soon. All right? So I want to talk about these three things about what we have to go execute. One, clear expectations. I'm talking about both externally and internally. The external is a little bit obvious, right? I used to have the nickname of Mo for Master of the Obvious. So, but this is about how do myself and my client be on the same page? Do we know what our relationship is about in the first place? Do we understand where we're trying to go? Do we know why? Have we come to an agreement on that? And then internally, quit storing all that relationship knowledge in your head. You mentioned client relationship management earlier. We can't just possess that as the figurehead of the firm. that information and that expectation has to be disseminated. It's got to be accessible. It's got to be understood. Those are things that have to happen. And some systems and processes probably need to be in place to be able to execute in that area. Middle bullet, conversation space. And I put the word intentional there. We talk to our clients a lot. But this is how we talk to them. Hey, I need something. And that could go either way. Us, I need something from them. They say, I need something from you. Sorry, that's not conversation. That's communication. We need intentional conversation space. Time that is carved out to say, where are we going with this whole thing? What are we really trying to do? What, client, keeps you up at night? Bill refers to these as the 3 a.m. things. He says it much better. But those things that I wake up at night, what am I thinking about? And what's getting in my way? We need to have space to have those conversations. If we don't understand how we can better serve our client. Coaching tools, and I put in their language. Do you guys know we have a language barrier problem in the accounting industry? Okay. And here's the big issue with the language barrier problem, is that nobody wants to admit it. Because all the words are normal, right? These aren't language barrier problems like doctors have with their patients, because they have words that are like this long, and they know they have to define it, and the hearer goes, yeah, you know I don't know what that means. But we use words like income, balance, profit, loss. What on earth could be wrong with those words? Everyone's got to understand what those mean. How could those simple words create a language barrier? But they do, because we have an expectation that when we define something and say, hey, we've got an issue on the balance sheet, because we understand the words balance sheet separately, together, we assume that the customer then understands the connection of behavior to the situation, or changed behavior to a changed result. The reality is they don't. But because the words are so common, the reason we don't take the time to explain them and connect dots for them, they go, I'm a business owner. I better just sit here and nod my head. If I say I don't understand what's going on with the balance sheet, I'm going to look dumb, right? And no one likes to look dumb. Of course, then people say, well, Will, why do you go outside with that haircut? But that's... So they're hesitant to come back and say, I don't really understand this. So we have to make that okay. We've got to be able to provide coaching tools in their language that helps them connect behavior to result. And nothing sets your value apart more from helping facilitating change behavior. Facilitating change behavior is a key value component for you there. I'm like cruising through this material. I need to slow down just a little bit. If that's how we do it, what does it look like? It's one thing to say, I really do it. It's another thing to be able to have it be seen. Had a business trip a couple months ago. Let's go with that. And the trip came up, and my wife's only a part-time nurse, but there's one day a year where she has to go in for mandatory training at 7 a.m., about an hour from our house. And it was one of those days that I was out of town. And so we got a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old at home going, all right, where's Google Maps? Where's the list of other people? How are we going to make all this happen while I'm in Texas? Okay? And so we finally found, all right, we're going to have our 4-year-old sleep over at a babysitter's house. Someone else is going to come early to get the older two and take them to school, and we'll work all that out. First thing my 4-year-old said, what do you mean I'm going to sleep over there? Yeah. Oh, like it's a sleepover. We know what that is. We've been through it. She didn't quite get it, but okay, that's fine. She was going anyway. She didn't have a choice in the matter. And then the next day, she woke up. She said, I know what a sleepover is now. And I know that feels obvious, but the point is, we could talk about things, but until we experience it, then we understand what it looks like. And that's what I'm talking about here. How do we know what it looks like from the outside. First bit, longer-term goals. If your clients are not having conversations around long-term goals with you, you don't have an advisory-centric relationship with your clients. And it doesn't matter what services you offer. If you are not talking about longer-term goals, it doesn't exist. Facilitating change. If you've not helped your clients do something different, you don't have an advisory relationship with your clients. The value of facilitation is highly undervalued today. It's the reason why certain services exist. I had this great idea one time to go start my own company making like this mobile app software for some things that my wife was involved with, which make it sound like it was illegal, but it wasn't, okay? It was perfectly fine. And so I have some, like we all do, right? We call up our buddies from college when we have neat ideas because we think that maybe they'll also think they're neat ideas. So one of them is a mobile app developer. A couple others are also in the same industry. Yeah, we can do that. Hey, that sounds great. Yeah, we'd buy into this if you make it happen. I'm like, okay. Then I called an accountant friend of mine. Thankfully, I know how to find accountants. And I said, so some people might want to pay me some money to own shares in something, and then we'd go build something. I think I need to form a company, right? This is the kind of dumb questions that I like to ask. He said, yep, go ahead and do that. I'm like, okay. I went out to LegalZoom.com. I figured this would be great. And I'm kind of cheap. And I said, $400. Are you kidding me? Maybe it was $200 even. I don't know. It was an extra $200 above the licensing fees or whatever it was. This is crazy. I'm going to go out to the Michigan Department of Legal and Regulatory Affairs website and fill out these forms myself. I don't know how the Maryland site is, but I was back at LegalZoom in about 2.5 minutes going, I see their value in facilitation. It is not enough for you to recommend the right things to do. It is not enough. You have to help them execute. The idea has the least amount of value. Implementation has the most amount of value. When we talk a lot in a program I help run called Practice Forward, we talk a lot about charging for your advisory services. And sometimes we get a little bit of pushback and says, well, why should I charge for that when I could just answer the question on the phone real quick for them? Well, my question is this. What gives better value to your customer? $0 bill, quick advice that 20% of them actually execute and half of those do it 3/4 of the way right? Or take half of those clients, they pay for something, it's done right, and they get the benefit of what you have advised them to do. What's better customer service? The free thing that they don't do and they get it wrong, or the thing they pay for, but they pay for the value of that facilitation? What's really better customer service? What is an illustration of a real advisory-based relationship? It's about facilitating change. And the relationships are managed through scope and not time, right? Now, insert video conference joke with scope, breath, yeah. Anyways, come on guys, we got, all right, I hadn't tried that before. I probably won't try it again. Yeah, like Tom said, you got to try new stuff, and if it doesn't work, you stop doing it. If your advisory relationships are all based on time you are spending, it is not an advisory relationship. Your relationships that are based on the scope of service, what's in scope, what's out of scope, and that has, back to the front, clarity of expectation, that is how you know you are seeing an advisory relationship. If everything is done by time, litigation support excluded, okay? That was kind of fun. A couple people chuckled. You do that. If everything is done by time, you can't possibly be advisory. You're both looking at the clock. You're too worried about margin here and there and how long will this be, and we're not worried enough about facilitating change in the longer term goals. If we focus on helping them attain their long-term goals, they will see value. We're going to get our money. Relax. Sorry, I have 3 kids. Sometimes that part kind of kicks out a little bit. All right? So these are some of those key areas that are in here. Now, as I end, another bullet. What if the compliance wasn't the task, but it was the progress report? What if your tax return for your customer wasn't what they paid for, but how you reflected what you've done for them? What if the set of books at the end of the year wasn't what they paid for, but the measurement of how you helped move things from the income statement to the balance sheet, or from the business balance sheet to the personal balance sheet of the business owner? To the points made earlier today, I don't believe that compliance work is going away, but I do believe it's coming into a new context. And this is where I think that context exists, is that it becomes the progress report of where we are, and are we helping our client deliver what we said we would deliver in those longer run goals. I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, but I would encourage you to ruminate on that a little bit. So, as I close, shameless self-plug on the screen for my podcast, weekly podcast. We have a lot of fun, Pulse of the Practice, as well as Practice Forward. We can talk about that to you later. But I want you to pause and think for a moment. I want you to think about your small business owner clients. Why do they do what they do? Because they've got something in their mind. They are trying to create a masterpiece. Whether it is some form of orchestral masterpiece, visual masterpiece, whatever it is, they're trying to create it. They've got that goal. But do you know what you are? Did you know that in that, you are the composer? You are the instructor at the sip and paint? You are the choreographer of the dance? Because you are the ones that possess the knowledge of what levers to pull, when to pull them. When to move this way because you know where you're going. They're sitting here trying to paint by numbers, and they're never going to have any kind of shading. They're never going to have tone. They're never going to have depth. The end masterpiece is not going to be a masterpiece. You have that skill. You have what they need to turn this into a true masterpiece artistically. Be that advisor to them. Help them see where these things that, whether it be entity structure changes, other things dealing with merger, acquisition, things with how do I deal with all these, tracking my business expenses separate from my personal expenses. These things aren't rocket science, but these are all the levers you have that they're not aware of. That is, you help them, put them in place at the right time, turn their business into the masterpiece they've been trying to obtain. So I challenge you to do that. Be that person for your clients. Thank you guys for your time today.